Welcome back. Thanks indeed for staying with us. Let's switch gears now and turn our attention to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, where 2 people have been killed and 11 others injured as a result of a shelling in Russia's Belgorod region. Emergency service can be seen clearing away debris, while footage shows broken car mirrors following the explosion. Russian armed forces said it downed a Ukrainian Mi-8 helicopter en route to the Belgorod border region. The country's investigative committee says an investigation into the attack has begun. However, Ukraine has not commented on the incident. The Belgorod region has seen reports of repeated shellings in recent days as the Russian presidential elections concluded. Speaking of the elections, reactions are still trained the just concluded Russia's presidential polls. Speaking at the conference in the Belgium capital, Brussels, EU foreign ministers condemned the polls, saying it was based on repression and intimidation.
Well, then again, I don't believe that there is a possibility to agree on something like this. And we have proved in the past that we're unable to agree even on less sensitive issues. We're unable to agree on less sensitive issues. So I would not believe that we would be able to agree on something like this. We have to be clear that as far as my country is concerned, we're ready to consider all options and be part of the coalitions that help Ukraine win this war.
We have seen the Russian elections, and a statement from the 27 will be issued after the Council. What I want to anticipate that this has not been free and fair elections, no OSCE observation, highly restricted environment. This is diplomatically what I can say, but more than that, this election has been based on repression and intimidation and being held on the Ukrainian occupied territory, violating Ukrainian sovereignty.
On the results of the presidential election in Russia, no need to comment. We all know that these elections were neither fair nor democratic or free. Romania condemned the organization of Russian presidential elections in illegally and annexed territories in Ukraine, but also in regions of Republic of Moldova, Transnistria, or of Georgia, South Ossetia, and Abkhazia. These are in violation of international law.
And for NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, the election was neither free nor fair. He made the disclosure at a news conference in Georgia, where he called on NATO members to step up support for Ukraine in its fight against Russia's aggression.
Russia's organization of elections in occupied parts of Georgia and Ukraine is completely illegal. And Russia's presidential election was clearly neither free nor fair. Georgia is facing complex security challenges. Russia persists its pursuit of imperial ambitions, and in Ukraine the situation on the battlefield remains difficult. So it is vital that we continue to step up our support. NATO allies provide 99% of all military aid to Ukraine, and our partners also play a key role. I welcome that Georgia is hosting thousands of Ukrainian refugees and providing crucial humanitarian and financial aid.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin has hailed the return of Crimea to Russia at a concert marking the 10th anniversary of the annexation of the territory from Ukraine. Thousands gathered in Moscow to participate in the festive parade. Addressing crowds in Moscow's Red Square, President Putin said Crimea had returned to its home harbor. Meanwhile, Turkey has reiterated it won't recognize Russia's annexation of Crimea and underlined its support for the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Russia forced entry into the Crimean Peninsula in February 2014 and in March formally annexed the region, a move Western nations, the UN and EU all view as illegal. Away from the wall, lawyers of former U.S. President Donald Trump says he cannot find a private company to guarantee the $464 million he has been ordered to pay in a New York civil fraud case. The former president must either pay the full amount in cash or secure a bond in order to continue his appeal. Mr. Trump says securing a bond of that size was, quote, practically impossible. He faces the prospects of some of his real estate assets being liquidated unless he pays up for a fee. A bonding company would guarantee the full amount to the New York court. They would then have to pay it if Mr. Trump loses his appeal and cannot do so himself. Mr. Trump's lawyers say they had approached 30 companies without any success. Well, let's unpack all of this with our Channels TV correspondent in Washington, D.C., Maria Baird, who joins us live on the program. Maria, good to see you again. For the sake of our viewers around the world who are hearing about this report for the first time and do not understand, walk us through how we got here to the point where the former U.S. president is being asked to pay $464 million.
So he's being asked by the New York Attorney General for the civil fraud case to pay $464 million. This is going to be quite a challenge for him, as we know that the former president has been up against many legal suits over the last few months, specifically as it relates to this case. And Trump's lawyers have asked to appeal this court to delay posting the bond until his appeal of the case is over, arguing that this is Trump's property, far exceeded the judgment and the appeals court that ruling against him. So this New York Attorney General is asking that he is having to put this forward.
Maria, this story has been in the news even before the primaries and Super Tuesday a few weeks ago. Is it an issue of guarantee or Trump's inability to pay the $464 million?
Yes, his inability is due to the fact that he cannot find an insurance bonding company that will be able to back this. There's very few bond companies that will be able to back a $464 million judgment. And so he is in quite a bit of a situation at this time as it relates to being able to fulfill this the judgment that the judge has put down.
So I wonder, will this have any impact on Trump's campaign? I mean, he's the Republican nominee for the presidential elections holding this November.
We've seen before that the former president has quite a bit of support from the community, from his base, from the Republican Party. We've seen that he has won several early election periods in the primaries, and he is leading the way for the Republican Party. Super Tuesday was very favorable for him with the Republican Party. So he is looking to be potentially the Republican candidate in the general elections come November. But we also know that it's also been a very clear point that the Supreme Court has made that he is eligible to be on the ballot. And so because of that, we could see, despite all of these legal challenges he's had, that he could still be potentially the next president for the United States.
And can I ask you, a few weeks ago, Mr. Trump launched his $400 golden sneakers. I wonder, just how are sales going?
So it's going in the best way that it can. I think that, as you said before, we've seen that the former president has lost some of these $400 golden sneakers and how the sale is going. I think that this is one of those that is a part of his campaign piece, a part of his getting more notoriety. I think we've heard him say before that any media is helpful for him. And so this is just another way for him to connect in with his base and to do something that is very untraditional for a presidential candidate.
Mm. And I remember the launch of the sneakers came up just about the same time as this particular fraud case. So you wonder if Mr. Trump would be perhaps able to make enough money to go through this particular case?
Yes, and so this is this particular case that you're speaking of directly. It could have some ties to it. I think that there's been minimal correlation between the two, but there could be some, as you've noted.
All right. So, I mean, Maria, the build-up to the elections, it's intensifying by the day. You have shared that Trump enjoys a lot of support, but I wonder in the coming months, do you think that support from his party will be shaky? I mean, with all of these issues of legal tussles here and there.
So the support from his party, as we've talked about previously, is that, we've seen the split in the Republican Party. We've seen those who have been considered the MAGA Republicans who are very much in support of the former president, and those who are more the traditionalist Republicans who've had some challenge. We know that former Representative Cheney obviously was one that spoke out very much against the former president. We know that there have been other Republicans that have not been in favor of the president. But as we look today and we see that the Republican Party is trying to ensure that they are able to clinch the White House and obviously to move some pieces forward, we're going to most likely see a large ending support of the former president by the Republican Party. You will see those letters coming in. You will definitely see that his nomination will likely be confirmed through the RNC when they have their convention this summer. So I think that we're in a very difficult position as Americans, but specifically the Republican Party is trying to find ways to band together despite the differing of opinions as it relates to the former president.
And Maria, allow me to squeeze in perhaps one final question, because Trump's family has not been very visible in the campaigns as compared to the presidential election in 2020. I wonder, what exactly are the Americans saying?
So as it compares to 2020, it's a very different election cycle. I mean, there has been, obviously the amount of visibility has been different due to the fact that we've also seen several, as we talked about, several court cases. 2020, we were in a position where we were looking at a former vice president on the Democratic side who has now become the president. We were looking at very different dynamics. We were talking about the obviously, we were looking at a time period where we were in the midst of a pandemic. So now we're in a new point, I think, of history. I think this is the first time ever we're going to see some of the oldest individuals running for president when you talk about the age of both the former president and our current president. So the dynamics are very different as well in this election cycle.
All right. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. I mean, it looks almost certain that it's a repeat of the 2020 elections where we had Trump and Biden go head-to-head. But Channel Civic, Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Beth, thanks indeed for the update.
Thank you.
Let's stay in the U.S., where the country is calling on the Cuban government to refrain from violence after it alleged that the U.S. embassy had incited anti-government protests in Havana. U.S. State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel says Washington is not behind the protests. He's also calling on the Cuban government to respect the rights of citizens to a peaceful demonstration.
The United States is not behind these protests in Cuba, and the accusation of that is absurd. I will note, though, since you asked, we are closely following these reports. Protests across several cities in Cuba yesterday called for electricity, food, and fundamental freedoms. I think what we are seeing is a reflection of the dire situation on the island. We urge the Cuban government to refrain from violence and unjust detentions and are calling on the authorities to respect the Cuban citizens' right to peaceful assembly.
In North Korea, Kim Jong-un has overseen live fire drills involving newly equipped super large multiple rocket launches. It comes a day after South Korea and Japan reported the country's launch of several short-range ballistic missiles, its first of such tests in about 2 months. The official Korean Central News Agency reported that the drills were aimed at testing the real-war capabilities of 600 millimeters multiple rocket launches. The exercises also involved simulating an aerial explosion of a shell at a predetermined altitude above the target. And President Kim, who has overseen multiple tests in recent years as he pursues his plan to modernize North Korea's military, says the rocket launchers would provide the core central striking means in war preparations. And Hong Kong has passed a tough security law, which authorities say is necessary for stability. Article 23 targets new offenses like external interference and insurrection, and penalties include life sentences. It was fast-tracked through its final stage by the city's pro-Beijing parliament in less than 2 weeks. Article 23 expands on a controversial national security law earlier imposed by China. And that law already criminalizes secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces in Hong Kong. Critics fear the law will further erode civil liberties, but Hong Kong's leader, John Lee, says Article 23 is also necessary to guard against potential sabotage and undercurrents that try to create troubles, particularly ideas of an independent Hong Kong. He also hailed its passing as a historic moment Hong Kong people have been waiting for over 26 years. And back here on the continent, Uganda precisely, security forces are on high alert after the said fighters from an Islamic State-linked group entered the country over the weekend. According to the army, the Allied Democratic Forces militants are planning attacks in urban areas, places of worship, schools, and public events. They're also urging the public to remain vigilant to avoid being victims. The ADF has been linked to a series of deadly attacks in Uganda, including targeting a school last June. The group was originally formed in Uganda in the 1990s by the people disgruntled with the government's treatment of Muslims, but after being routed by the army, the remnants fled across the border to the Democratic Republic of Congo. In 2021, Uganda and DR Congo launched a joint offensive to drive the ADF out of their Congolese strongholds. And earlier, my colleague Layo Olarinde spoke with VOA's Uganda correspondent Halima Athumani on the latest development.
All these districts are neighboring DRC. All these districts are potential entry points for the ADF. So there is no way that the army can be able to guard all of these locations securely, adequately, to ensure that Ugandans are safely guarded. We've seen previous attacks. The army has always been at the border points, but these attacks still happen. So that's why I earlier said maybe just coming out and telling the public they are here, they are coming, was a good move by the Ugandan People Defense Forces.
And, you know, this also calls to question the success of the launch of a joint offensive back in 2021 with Uganda and DRC, you know, launching that joint offensive to drive out the ADF. But how successful has that been to drive out these militants from their Congolese strongholds?
Lyle, I think I need to be honest with you. No independent media would say that, you know, they can completely verify how successful or confirm and affirm how successful the FADC, and that is the Congolese army, and the Ugandan army operation, which is Operation Shujaa, how successful it has been. Reason being, every information we've gotten regarding that operation has come from the army. There's not been any media access to go in. It's not a place that, independent media can just go in and say, I want to come and verify, has Operation Shujaa been successful? But from the government, from the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, through his various addresses to the nation, they've shown us how much they've distracted the locations, the strong points of the ADF, how they've been able to, send the ADF away from most of their strongholds in eastern DRC into different areas of the DRC. So hopefully this will be, to use the words by Kanodeo yesterday, he said revenge attacks, actually not that, he actually said it is going to be suicidal for these terrorists to enter into Uganda, and the UPDF will do everything possible to annihilate them.
And we'll stay here on the continent, this time in South Africa, where authorities are searching for a missing charter boat captain after they discovered his vessel was burned and abandoned on a beach in neighboring Mozambique. The National Sea Rescue Institute says they are still concerned about possible foul play because there is no sign of him or the unknown man who hired him. The institute is raising an alarm over Captain John Matambu and his passenger after they didn't return to Sudwana Bay on South Africa's northeastern coast on Saturday evening, having gone out early that morning. The charred wreck of Matambu's speedboat, Magnum 2, was discovered by a search plane in the Dobela area of Mozambique, some 170 kilometers up the coast. According to the institute, the man who hired Matambu to take him out on the 21-foot boat apparently gave false contact details. The booking was made for a man, his wife, and a child, but only the man boarded the boat. And some residents in Johannesburg, the country's economic hub, are facing a second week without water as breakdowns in parts of its national water system is threatening the economy. The utility struggles to return supply after a blast shattered one of its key pump stations, with taps running dry from Mbombela in the east of the country to the south of Johannesburg. Some residents are finding it difficult to go on with their daily lives. Our South Africa correspondent Innocent Semosa tells us more.
Thousands of residents are facing dire circumstances as the utility struggles to restore water supply following a critical pump station shutdown. Joburg resident Spiwe Mtombeni says simple tasks like cooking, cleaning, and even basic hygiene have become nearly impossible.
It's very difficult. It was very difficult for me, especially as a mother, not having running water in the house, hygiene most especially for hygiene purposes, because now you can't flush the toilet, you can't wash the dishes, you can't clean the house. So we would depend on filling up buckets, but the water is just not enough. It really disturbed me because, especially for my youngest child, we would have to go and collect them early from school, because there's no water, there's no running water, there's no drinking water. So as that affected me, because I had to make other plans. As a working parent, I had to make other plans, which meant that I have to spend more money finding someone to take care of the child.
As the water crisis deepens, residents are forced to adapt to a new norm where access to clean water is increasingly uncertain. Analysts point out that the government overlooked critical infrastructure maintenance.
Now, maybe the question that we need to grapple with is, what is the cause of this? I think partly is because of the appointment of wrong people in certain strategic places, because if you are dealing with issues of water, you need to appoint professionals who can plan. Because you are speaking about infrastructure that is falling apart. So then the question is, why is that particular infrastructure falling apart? It is partly because of shortage of engineers, shortage of good professional managers.
This water crisis serves as a stark reminder of the urgent need for robust infrastructure and effective management of vital resources. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
As we begin to wind down on the program, Egypt's Al-Azhar Mosque has hosted an iftar event for 5,000 Muslims, including many international students, as the holy month of Ramadan continues. The mosque is also celebrating its 1,084th anniversary. Located in the historic Cairo area, Al-Azhar is one of the city's oldest and main mosques in Egypt.
Al-Azhar Mosque in Cairo hosts a daily free banquet for thousands of international students at Azhar University who are observing the holy month Ramadan away from their families in other Muslim countries. About 5,000 people participate in the iftar event, even as the mosque also celebrates its 1,084th anniversary.
This collective iftar is held for our international students who belong to more than 100 countries around the world. Al-Azhar Sharif is keen to host the banquet for them every year, and this is the third year in a row. We started this banquet 2 years ago, and we're in the third year.
For many of the foreign students, the banquet provides care and attention to alleviate the pain of homesickness. The students pray in the mosque yard while volunteers distribute iftar meals. Volunteer Ahmed Radwan helps distribute free iftar meals.
We distribute between 5,000 and 7,500 meals a year, and this is throughout the month of Ramadan. For 3 years, we have been distributing continuously every day, delivering meal carts, juice, and water daily.
The Ramadan tradition involved Muslims gathering to break their fast together after sunset. Al-Azhar University hosts students from 120 countries across the globe, 5,000 of whom break their daily fast at the Azhar Ramadan banquet, totaling around 150,000 free meals throughout the month. The huge mosque and university teaches Islamic sciences and receives thousands of foreign students from across Asia and Africa.
And finally on the program, call it the Super Bowl of hair cutting, as hundreds gathered for the Great Cut event in San Diego in the US. They only have one aim, which is to set a new Guinness World Record for the world's largest hair donation by supporting children with hair loss. Volunteers are targeting the current record of 153 kilograms of hair. According to the event website, the hair gathered at the event will be used to create wigs for children dealing with conditions such as cancer and alopecia.
We are here at the Broadway Pier in San Diego. This is the Super Bowl of haircutting. It is the world's largest hair donation event where we are attempting to break the Guinness World Record for the most hair cut and donated in 24 hours. We have hundreds of people here in person. We've also had thousands of people mail in their hair. It's all getting ran through the system here that we've developed for the Great Cut. and we're getting it done. Everything here goes to children with hair loss.
I got here today around 11. I was second shift, but there's still so many people here that need to get haircuts, so I'm staying until we're finished, maybe? I don't know. I don't know if we're going to finish. How are we supposed to finish this?
Today I'm here to adjudicate the record attempt for the largest donation of hair in 24 hours. The record to beat is 153 kilograms, and the record holder is the same who is attempting today.
And there you go. If you think you're hairy, then you can also contribute to the great Cant world record attempt. And the great Cant does it for us here on the show, everyone. Thanks indeed for watching. On behalf of the team, I'm Kelly Ejiga. Bye now.